It's one of the most important things in the Christian life. And today I'd like to look at a powerful example of how it can work out in the life of a believer in Joshua chapter 2. This is Eric Slawick, the UWM Pen Guy, and this is the Bible Commentary. As always, if you like what you're seeing, I'd ask that you hit like and subscribe in order to help the channel grow. And now, without further ado, let's get into the Word. So, today we're going to finish up Joshua chapter 2 by looking at the result of this entire drama between Rahab and the spies. We've seen a lot about how it impacted Rahab. Now let's look at how it impacted the spies. In these two final verses, you see that encouragement was the new reality for the spies and for the nation of Israel. Let's read the verses. Then the two men returned. They came down from the hills and passed over and came to Joshua the son of Nun. And they told him all that had happened to them. And they said to Joshua, Truly the Lord has given all the land into our hands. And also the inhabitants of the land melt away because of us. So it's immediately apparent, the tone of this section. The language of the spies is very strong indeed. And actually it's ironically enough the language of Rahab, to reinforce several previous points about Rahab's valuable contribution to the work of Israel that she didn't even intend to make. She was simply herself and said what she wanted to say. And she gave great encouragement to the spies. Now, it's worth mentioning that encouragement is actually a gift in the New Testament. I'll put up a list of it here, and you can see encouragement's a part of it. Encouragement is a very powerful thing. And to illustrate the point further, I will print another example of this, where a prophet comes to, I believe it was King Hezekiah, and encourages him that he is doing a good work by purifying the kingdom of Judah many centuries after this, and faithfully following God by faith. And you can see that as a result of this, and I'll put it up now, Hezekiah kind of goes into overdrive. He is greatly encouraged, and that encouragement is the energy that drives him to keep moving and moving and moving. And if many Christian believers, myself included, have experienced the power of this on more occasions than we can possibly count. And so if you have a desire to encourage another believer, don't ever underestimate the power of that. You see here with the spies, here with Hezekiah, and framed within the New Testament gift, the role that this can play. Now, getting back to the account in Joshua, you can see also that this begins on a note of wonder, in a sense, because they have returned at all. I mean, this was the thing that doomed the previous generation to wander around in circles, was not being willing to see what God might do if they continued to be faithful. They saw the giants in the land, and their hearts fainted, and they gave up. And now we see with just these two spies that because they were faithful and brought a good report, you cannot underestimate the difference in the report that these two groups have brought. I will actually put up a sample of the report brought by the spies in the previous generation, and then a clip of exactly how it caused the collapse of their fathers. Because look at this. Look at the contrast. They brought an evil report, and the entire people failed. Now, this was a generation that was already basically heading for failure anyways. But as Jesus says, it is inevitable that stumbling blocks come, but woe to those by whom they come. It was better for those people that they had never been born. It was better for those 10 spies that they had never been, or I'm sorry, I confused references there. Woe to those, it would be better, I believe this is the millstone one, but in any case, it's a very harsh judgment those people face. Those 10 spies are going to stand before the Lord Christ and face a very harsh judgment. And it's just a horrifying thing. And yet we'll see in Joshua, when this is reversed, how this encouragement no doubt led to more encouragement and led to the people being ready to cross the Jordan and being ready to conquer the city of Jericho, and then so on into the book of Joshua. So this is what you could call a cycle of victory, where God, they see that the hearts of the people have melted. God has cleared the way. He's, as I said in a previous video, he's handed the people over, handed them over, handed them over. And now the people's hearts are encouraged. And their faith is built up. And they go boldly into the land as a result of this encouragement. And their faith seeing some fulfillment. And then they conquer under God. And they're more encouraged. And they conquer and they're more encouraged. It's the cycle of victory. The previous generation had fallen into the cycle of defeat, where they were discouraged and they griped and they complained and they had unbelief. And so then these 10 spies went in with unbelieving hearts, and they were more discouraged, and they spread discouragement, and then they wandered around in circles for 40 years, and it was just a cycle of defeat and doom. But now you have a cycle of victory. And there's also something of a massive irony here, because Joshua is now on the receiving end, as Moses had been, of the report. Moses has had to deal with the fact that like 85 to 90% of the spies were bringing an evil report, where Joshua only has to deal with the good, faithful report. Now, Joshua, of course, as has been previously alluded to, certainly took his knocks and came up through trials and difficulty. So it's not like he's gotten the long end of the stick and nothing but that. Joshua, in fact, has arrived at this point through a long process, and now the victory is at hand. But it's still ironic. It's ironic that Moses becomes the most prominent figure in the Old Testament, alongside David and Abraham, perhaps. But he never got to see the Promised Land. He received a primarily evil report. And so God never really gives all of his benefit and blessing to just one person except the Lord Christ himself. He gives something to some and then removes something from that same person to give that to someone else. That's, again, that one body, many parts, or it's a fact we see illustrated when the Apostle Paul received a thorn in the flesh after having taken an actual physical trip to heaven, apparently. And Christ told him that in order that he not be exalted beyond measure or think more highly of himself than he ought, he received a thorn in the flesh. We don't know what it was. A lot of speculation about that. Could have been a person, could have been a disease, could have been something else. But whatever it was, I think it's deliberately vague in order that it has the maximum applicability today. But whatever it was, Paul prayed 3 times to have it removed, and Christ would not remove it, in order to, again, keep Paul humble and teach Paul that Christ told him, my grace is sufficient for you. And so we see here, again, Joshua has the privilege of leading the people in, but he doesn't have the kind of prominence that Moses did. After all, in the time of Jesus, Moses would become synonymous with the Pentateuch, all 5 books themselves. The Pharisees would call themselves disciples of Moses. Moses was a prominent character even in the New Testament. That's how famous he had become and how synonymous he had become with the law of God and the name of God, as was the case with Abraham. Joshua doesn't come up very often, except, of course, in sort of the ironic background sense that he literally has the same name Jesus does. And the book of Joshua is mentioned several times in the New Testament. But again, it's that balance. Paul saw amazing fruit. Paul had remarkable spiritual productivity by any standard at all. But he also suffered persecution and a thorn in the flesh. Everything balances out in God's working with his people. Everyone has a place. Everyone has a role they can serve. And so to wrap this all up again, one final thought is that this entire chapter, this entire reality of the two generations of Israel demonstrates what Ezekiel would much later say to the children of Israel as they were reaching the end of their independent history in Bible times. As they were about to go under Gentile domination from then until, in many ways, today, depending on what you want to think about the state of Israel. Not going into that right now. Way too inflammatory. But in Bible times, they would be under Gentile domination for the rest of their history in that era. And the question... near the end of their time of independence, they were apparently starting to say, well, our parents sinned, we're just stuck. We just have to sin. Or our parents were righteous, so now we're automatically righteous. They made both mistakes in both directions. And Ezekiel has to correct them, and it's a long Hebrew poetry kind of prophecy. But I'll cover the fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. That basically means we're just stuck. We're just stuck. Whatever our parents were, whatever they did, we're just stuck. We're going to do that too. We're just doomed. But here you see that the previous generation had been unfaithful and have been condemned to the wilderness wanderings, but this generation will be faithful and will achieve the beginning of the conquest of the land. Then the next generation will again be unfaithful and will fail to finish the conquest of the land and send many generations into seemingly endless spirals of victory and defeat and victory and defeat and victory and defeat. Every generation stands or falls on its own. There is nothing genetic about faith or unbelief. And that's very important to bear in mind, because one of the most prominent ways that people in general come to a false faith is to think that their parents being Christians makes them Christians automatically. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Likewise, if you think that your parents were so opposed to the gospel you could never believe, or your culture is, again, nothing could be farther from the truth. And so to wrap this all up, encouragement is a powerful thing. And if you are needing encouragement, just look to the scriptures and look at the promises of God and look at the history of God's faithfulness and see how God can work in your life today too. And if you're outside of Christ, if you're not a genuine Christian, then or you're not a Christian who has turned in repentance and faith, then I would encourage you to do so you can gain the greatest encouragement of all, which is the knowledge of the blessings of eternal life. And so until next time, this is Eric Slawick, DWM Penn Guy, and this has been the Bible Commentary and our study of Joshua chapter 2, and I'll see you for Joshua chapter 3 in the next video.